Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Virginia, one of VALVEcampus organizers. Welcome to the workshop Evolution of International Demand of Industrial Valves and Their Components in the Medium Term, the Influence of Strategy Change, the Energy Transition, and the New Sustainability Imposed by Pandemic Scenario. There are many guests today with us. The first question for our guest is, the pandemic even shocked the investment, holding many projects and giving acceleration to the energy transition agenda, causing a rather significant reduction in the demand of industrial equipment and piping components for new plants. From your point of view, do you think that the investments will start early and the demand will quickly return to the pandemic level, or a long period of stability is expected and investment will restart only with a more reliable scenario? I leave the floor to Mr. Michel Ronquin, Global Senior Category Manager, Piping in Onshore and Offshore Valves at Technip Energy.
Thanks for this question, Virginia. And first of all, as we are all aware, COVID pandemic suddenly broke out and spread quickly, taking most of the governments by surprise and causing a huge problem for global economy. One of the first remedial action was to quarantine people and stop traveling. The situation produced, among others, a dramatic reduction in the consumption, with direct consequences in our reference market of oil and gas, already impacted by the crisis occurring in the period 2014-2017. As first reaction, major projects were delayed or even cancelled. Then main clients start to show the same approach towards the EPC contractors, asking for a drastic reduction, but for CapEx and OpEx, uncompromising surely safety and quality. On top of that, we cannot forget climate changes that arise into the so-called energy transition to green fuel, resulting into a new mindset oriented in developing more and more LNG and low-carbon LNG, sustainable chemistry, decarbonization, and among the others also carbon-free energy solution. After first uncertainty, now I would say it seems that market is shyly moving ahead again. I would say also that one of the first and strong message from the market is the recent award of Qatargas North Field expansion. Just for your information, we are talking about a mega project that will deliver 4 liquefied natural gas (LNG) mega trains in Qatar. Each mega train will produce 8 million tons per annum of LNG, which will increase Qatar's output by more than 40%, from 77 to under 10 MTPA. The development will also include a carbon capture and sequestration facility, which will reduce greenhouse gas, GHG emission, by 25% compared to similar LNG facilities. At the same time, some other activities have also brought ahead both as project or as front-end engineering design. We can have in mind our activities in Egypt by chance. To conclude, I'm reasonably convinced that investment will recover in the mid-term, and it is also important to highlight that new type of plant will request anyway the use of industrial equipment and components.
I leave the floor to Mr. Carlo De Bernardi, VALVESME Additive Manufacturing Industrial Lead at ConocoPhillips.
Hello everybody, my name is Carlo De Bernardi. I work for ConocoPhillips in Houston, Texas, and I'm part of the Central Engineering Group. So my job is supporting all our business units and projects with all matters related to valves and actuation. And I'm also leading a number of innovation initiatives, including additive manufacturing. Okay, so the first question is about the change in the investments and change in scenario after the pandemic. And I would like to say that the volatility that we can see in the market today is not something that started because of the pandemic or with the pandemic. It's something that is already here since a number of years. I recall that starting with 2014, 2015, we experienced a big change in the scenario for the oil and gas industry. That volatility started there and is still present today. So most likely the pandemic created an acceleration on transformations, but the volatility is here to stay. So this volatility means that long-term investments, like the majority of the investments in the oil and gas, are challenging these days because investors are concerned about committing for large capital projects. This is again not something that is going to change tomorrow. There will be probably few exceptions around the world, but on average, most of the oil companies will be working on smaller, more efficient type of projects, and will be focusing on much shorter returns on investments. With that being said, we are also experiencing another interesting situation that is tied to the energy transformation. The energy transformation again is something that has been accelerated with the pandemic. However, the general feeling today is that the oil and gas industry is going to disappear overnight. And this is not possible, this is not going to happen. So the way that I see it, and this is my personal view, is that the energy transformation is what the general public is expecting. Being private companies, we have to basically follow what the market is demanding, and we are trying to adapt. However, the energy demand is not going to slow down, it's going to increase over time, and the existing infrastructures are functional and are needed in order to supply consistent and reliable amount of energies to the world population. The energy transformation will take time. Is not only about producing energy from different sources, but is also a matter of transporting the energy to the users. So in order to transport the energy, you need specific infrastructures. Not all the existing infrastructures that are built to transport basically oil, gas, and chemicals are suitable to transport energy that is stored in different ways. So one example is the hydrogen. Hydrogen is one of the buzzwords these days, and there is lots of focus about blue hydrogen versus green hydrogen, and that is one aspect. But again, then we have to transport the hydrogen to the point of utilization. And in order to do that, the vast majority of the existing infrastructures, including pipelines, etc., they are definitely not built for it. They will need a profound and extremely expensive transformation. So you see that there are countries like the United States that are committing on billions, not even trillions of dollars in terms of modernizing infrastructures. It will be key to have governments that will contribute to that, because again, without the ability to move the hydrogen, for example, there is no point of producing the hydrogen itself. And then you have other aspects like the reliability of other type of energy sources, like the solar energy, for example. That is not something that is suited by itself to fit with the current needs of constant, reliable amount of energies 365 days a year. It will need, again, big investments in terms of energy storage, like batteries, and we will need to see lots of improvement from a technological point of view in order to make that happen. With that being said, again, oil and gas is going to stay for a long period of time. And what I see happening is that there are some end users that are trying to transform themselves, other end users that are not transforming themselves so deeply and so quickly, only because what we are able to do today and what we are good at is exploring, is producing oil and gas. So some of these producers, they are just trying to stay closer to their core competencies that makes them profitable. And most likely there will be a game of consolidations and mergers, acquisitions, these type of things happening in the near future, where you will see basically two fronts. One front will be companies that are transforming themselves. The other front is company that will be even more specialized in what they are doing today.
I leave the floor to Mr. Andrea Tattanelli, Business Development Manager Italy and France at Intertech SPA.
Hi everybody, I'm Andrea Tattanelli, Business Development Manager Italy and France at Intertech Industry Services. Well, first of all, thank you for your question. And I'd like to say that in my opinion, frankly speaking, we have in front of us a brilliant future. That's true that the pandemic event has shocked the investment. And I like to say that those who work, especially in the oil and gas sector, are once again called to a stronger resilience. If we take a look on barrel prices since the end of the 90s, we have immediately a look, so we can see a real roller coaster in terms of the prices that are moving up and down, down to $30, back to 130 again, and then more than 100 if we think about the ancient demand, the 9/11, again the Asian market grow, but then the global financial crisis, Arab Spring, the global oversupply. And if we have a look also on the chart on the pandemic period, so 2020-21, we see that we had the big dip around in the middle of the lockdown, so in March, April, where the price dropped to $18 and even for some days on negative value. But then in Q3 back to $60 and up to today we are still there, 60, 65, again 60, and even a lot of analysts, they are saying that this is more or less the price that we will see even in the future. Every time that we face a crisis, we face it on a stop on investments, with especially on the main projects, the greenfield projects, a lot of so have been put on hold, and we assisted sometimes on revised strategies, coming back to revamping projects, turnaround, and especially this kind of project forced the suppliers of the industrial equipment to reshape the organization to satisfy a need in terms of services solution, engineering, reverse engineering solutions, and spare parts more than brand new equipment. What is the difference now? I think that the difference now is, as you mentioned in the question, is the energy transition. So energy transition is not more a romantic storytelling. I say it's romantic storytelling because if we have a look on the period from 1980 to 2020, in terms of energy consumption, we can measure a plus 55%, but in the same time, still an 80% of the energy production from fossil fuels. This time is different for the simple reason that, for example, renewables are not more considered as a single-digit contributor in terms of percentage in the energy production. First of all, this time China and US are on board. US is back on the Paris Agreement, is one of the first act of President Biden. And China, in this moment, if I'm not wrong, is the first in production from solar plant, in a wind farm, and in e-mobility. And talking about fossil fuels, for example, they are the best performer in terms of efficiency from the use of gas. We have also to talk about hydrogen. The hydrogen that is moment, that's true, we are talking about black hydrogen because it's still, the production is still coming from fossil fuels. The energy for is coming from fossil fuels, but we are witnessing with oil and gas companies, energy utilities, a big consortium that are leading the design of hydrogen supply chain, moving from upstream to downstream. For sure, is nothing that we will see tomorrow, but anyhow we started. So we have to consider also with talking about energy transition, talking about hydrogen, we are talking about also carbon storage, carbon recovery, so carbon capture, main projects that are not more just R&D, so research and development, but engineering firms and are working on field design and detailed design to let them to come true. All these kind of investment, this energy transition is in this moment funded by the core business of the main oil and gas companies. So even their core businesses investment will be released again. As I like to mention also one point that, okay, we mentioned the renewable, the hydrogen. We have to remember also that in the net zero program, we have to include nuclear. We cannot consider nuclear renewable, but inside the net zero program, they have an important role, and some mega projects already started, even if we talk about rejuvenation or revamping of existing nuclear plants or brand new. That's true that countries are reacting in different ways and cannot be put in the same basket. They are having different approaches for the post-pandemic, but we have to consider that most of the governments and they are working on recovery plan, and to fund especially the energy transition and all the infrastructural projects. So I repeat again, for the industrial equipment and for the piping components and all the suppliers that are working around the oil and gas and energy industries, will have in front of them a brilliant future.
I leave the floor to Mr. Chris Conrad, Quality Manager for Valves and Pledge Management at Chevron.
Hi, everybody. This is Chris Conrad. I'm with Chevron. I'm a piping and valve engineer. I'm also the technical authority on a number of projects, supporting specifications, root cause analysis, failures, all kinds of things around the piping and valves. Been working with valves for 20 years, working in Italy, working around the world on global projects. Currently, I'm stationed here in TCO as the quality manager for the valves and the flanges. Regarding the questions around the pandemic, around restarting activities, in my opinion, there's going to be a lot of work on the existing assets. So that's going to be the primary focus. So from Chevron's standpoint, from a number of global oil major standpoints, we're going to expand the footprint of those existing projects. Of course, to expand the portfolio of new projects, to get into natural gas and the LNG aspects and fracking and different aspects of our industry. I think the companies will explore that to provide a wider portfolio of these types of projects, not to be so segmented in a geographical area or a market segment so much. Of course, alternative energies and things like this is what Chevron's looking at as well. Nuclear and other sides of that. But from the standpoint of our particular core industry of oil and gas, we're going to continue forward, right? I mean, that's going to be our basis. And so again, we have in Chevron's world, we have a number of projects, and we have a very diverse basis of projects, from the big LNG projects such as Angola LNG and Gorgon, Wheatstone, and then of course conventional projects, oil projects like TCO is currently the largest project in the world, and of course all the offshore and refinery work as well. So we have a pretty diverse base that we're going to work and grow that base. We have an established team. We have an established basis business unit all over the world that's holding these projects, and so we're going to grow those asset bases that are substantial already. But it's much easier and much less risk to add on to these projects with that established basis, because you also have your supply base and all the things that go around managing a project, from the contractor, from our business partners. Everybody's pretty well established on these projects. And so new projects, of course, we're not going to stand still. There's going to be some new projects moving forward. But as far as a restart goes, we're seeing the oil prices climb. We're seeing the ability to get the product in. There's of course some delays with the supply chain, which I'll touch on in a moment. But the growing of and the efficiency aspects of these assets is what we're going to continue to focus on. Okay, so we're already restarting, and to for example, in TCO, our current project, we have something like 90,000 valves, and there's going to be a need to support the operational aspect of those valves. And of course, as these current asset bases age, you're going to have decline of the integrity of the seals and operational issues with the valves just as they age through these complex environments. And we're going to have to go and get new valves. So you're going to see the supply continue. I know we've declined a bit, but it'll stabilize out, and I think it will continue to increase. Will it go back to 2013, 2010 levels? Probably going to take a while for that. But I think for the next 20 years or so, we're going to be increasing the demand for the products, although possibly slow. But there's still a need for all segments of the market, from the commodity valves to the quick turn to the big project valves, and complex, more simple valves, of course. So the whole thing is there. Just it might change just a little bit. But again, I know there's a big concern in the industry with this shift to alternative energies, which is a natural shift, and it's in some aspects correct. But if you look at the actual efficiency and the energy associated with petroleum products, there's no comparison right now. Okay, you still need energy to make a battery or to power a battery. Wind energy and other things. We've seen the downfalls of some of that in Texas with windmills freezing and issues like that. So it's going to be a balanced portfolio of these energy sources. But if you look at the economics of it, oil, natural gas is just more efficient for that. So it's going to be able to power the hungry needs of the globe over the next foreseeable future. Definitely for 20 years, I think we'll still see a solid need for our industry, and into the future as well. I mean, we have pretty significant reserves. If we look at natural gas and some of these reserves that I've been working on recently, we can have natural gas, because we're re-injecting the natural gas right now to have an oil to gas ratio to allow us to actually let the oil flow out of our wells. But eventually we'll take that natural gas and possibly liquefy it and ship it. And so both of those aspects are going to continue on to the foreseeable future, again, because it's efficient and because the globe needs it. As these different economies grow, they're going to need the lights on and such, or to power the next phase of renewable energies. And so, yeah, there's definitely going to be a balance there. But I think, as far as the restart and such, it's some things will happen slower and some things will happen faster. Depends on the particular market that we're talking about.
I leave the floor to Mr. Maurizio D'Ambrosio, Head of Shore Category Management, Piping and Structure at Saipem.
Good morning to everybody, and thanks for having me at this meeting. My name is Maurizio D'Ambrosio, and I am Category Manager for Piping and Valves Material at Saipem Onshore Division. The pandemic outbreak definitely changed completely the scenario that an EPC contractor like Saipem was expecting for 2020 and 2021. We were leaving the 2019 with positive feelings in terms of new contract and the project that we were executing. And in the first quarter of 2020, the scenario completely changed. Because of the pandemic outbreak, all the activity all over the world stopped, the oil price dramatically dropped, and in cascade, many initiatives related to this were stopped or put on hold until a later date. In this scenario, we reacted as Saipem by reorganizing our job activities, not only in Italy, but all over the world, and also helping our client to reorganize the project, the execution schedule of the project, in order to make them sustainable and without impacting their cash in and cash out. Of course, the negative impact of what happened is on the new acquisition. In fact, we were not able of meeting the target for the new acquisition. But to answer to your question, we just start receiving new invitation to bid from our client. So this is a positive signal that the situation is recovering. Of course, the climate of uncertainty still remains in the market, and we believe that this will last up to the end of 2021.
The second question is, the pandemic has highlighted both the weakest points of the supply chain and the engineering and manufacturing models, which now appear more flexible, faster, and more functional. For those industries where these models are inapplicable or partially applicable, do you believe that the supply chain of industrial equipment and piping components will be pushed up or the limit or resilient towards the current procurement model, where the fundamental paradigm will remain cheaper, cleaner, more efficient, together with the approach 3 offers and the purchase order? Or do you think that a more sustainable model will be negotiated with the supply chain to safeguard their will value sometimes their existence? In general, do you believe or feel that main contractor could act to ensure the resilience of supply chain by promoting new business model and collaboration with the ecosystem of suppliers in order to radically simplify standard process and the interface, reducing costs and increasing speed and the quality of the whole supply system, forcing a deep strategic integration with the supply chain? I leave the floor to Mr. Michel Ronquin, Global Senior Category Manager, Piping and Onshore and Offshore Valves at Technip Energy.
Following on from my previous reply, pandemic is obliging the entire supply chain to be more competitive and find smart solutions to ensure business continuity. The most vivid example is the smart working. What happened is that suddenly we faced the need to continue our jobs without being able to reach offices or traveling, and we demonstrated that it is possible. Such approach requested us to overcome our habits, to not be afraid to confront each other constructively and to change a problem into an opportunity. As main contractor, we believe it is critical to identify the suppliers who believe in the need to find every possible solution to enhance competitiveness. Digitalization and standardization are the fundamental topic that more and more are under development. But we cannot forget also some information that become vital to strengthen the relationship between contractors and supplier. And I'm thinking about workload, original raw materials, and local content that shall be clearly discussed even at proposal stage. To cope the challenge we are facing, we will focus on developing innovative work methods and in the productive cycle of a project aimed at reducing the internal management cost, increase the quality of final product, decrease the execution time, and ultimately improve the project schedule.
I leave the floor to Mr. Carlo De Bernardi, VALVEcampus Additive Manufacturing Industrial Lead at the Conoco Philips.
Definitely, the pandemic highlighted some of the weakest points in the current supply chain. These weaknesses, they were already present before the pandemic. The pandemic worked like a catalyst that made these weaknesses and these inefficiencies more evident. There are many things definitely that we have to do better, that we have to change. We all need to have better efficiencies. We have to do things cheaper, and we have to do things better. So this is easy to say, but definitely is not the easiest thing to do in the real world. So one of the big problems that we are experiencing, again, starting from 2015, is not something that started with the pandemic, is loss of expertise. So there is a combination of a generational change in our industry and the beginning of downturns, multiple downturns, and volatility in the oil and gas market. That is creating a pretty significant gap or void in terms of expertise in the entire supply chain. So that starts on the end user side, it goes down to the EPC side, and down to suppliers and sub-suppliers. Loss of expertise means that we have a new generation that is trying to keep up with something that is changing without having lots of mentors that are able to teach them how to do things right. So that is, of course, causing disruptions, that is causing inefficiencies, and that is in combination with the need of, again, reducing both CapEx and OpEx. So in terms of CapEx and OpEx reduction, that has always been the mantra of our industry during downturns. And the easy way to do that is by cutting costs. And cutting costs means going to the cheapest option available on the market. The problem is that when you don't have a technical filter that is able to analyze what the viable options are, you are only looking at price or lead time or a combination of both. And by doing that, you are not paying enough attention to the quality and safety aspects of the equipment that you are going to buy and to install. And that is resulting sometimes in some minor or major issues that we are all experiencing, all of them resulting in safety concerns or disruptions of production. So what is the industry doing, or what the industry should be doing in order to minimize that risk? I believe that the first thing is trying to work on a decentralized supply chain. The world today, manufacturing-wise, is extremely dependent on few countries, especially on the Asia-Pacific area, and that is creating these disruptions in moments like a pandemic or in moments like markets downturns of upturns. Decentralizing production means distributing the risk. and means having more control of the supply chain itself. So that requires investments from each and every country that has an interest in doing that. That means creating specialized jobs even when they don't exist, and that means adopting new technologies. So one of the main areas of my interest is additive manufacturing or 3D printing. So 3D printing is a very promising technology, and that can cover some of the needs that we have today in the oil and gas in terms of metallic components and non-metallic components. We are working on standardizing or creating standards around additive manufacturing, like the API work that I'm chairing, API 20S, and the new task group that just started on polymers, 3D printed polymers, called API 20T. After a few years that I'm working in this area, however, I realized that, in my opinion, the main challenge is not really technical, is a supply chain type of challenge. So we are now in a situation where the industry is curious about the technology, but not ready to adopt the technology and not able to generate big volumes. So without generating volumes, there is no technology that will be evolving to adapt to the needs of the customers. So I believe that we as an industry, we have to come together and we have to create a more collaborative environment between end users, OEMs, and technology providers in order to be able to safely define the current area of application of new technologies, including additive, generating volumes, and these volumes will allow the technology to evolve and to improve in order to deliver what we need. So the additive manufacturing example will allow to reduce the OPEX, because it will allow us to reduce significantly, potentially significantly, the investments in spare parts that we need to do. And it will also allow to onshoring the supply chain, means having components or equipment that is made closer, much closer to the point of utilization. And in case of local disruptions, it will be relatively easy to switch to a different network to cover a temporary disruption in demand. Other technologies are all aimed to do the same. But again, the first thing is for end users to do a better job in selecting technologies that can be useful. And the second step is not being over-conservative and more open-minded and trying to use these technologies. Because if we do not create the demand, the technology will never evolve itself to adapt to our own needs.
I leave the floor to Mr. Andrea Stattanelli, Business Development Manager Italy and France at Intertech.
Well, regarding your question, I'm not so sure that is the pandemic is the main actor showing the weakest point on procurement models or supply chain models. Instead, I think that the pandemic is accelerating a trend to reshape and expand these kind of models. What does that mean? I like to say that in my opinion, there is a strong acceleration to a concept of a new indicator that is a tangible, an intangible one, but it's very important. That is the sense of trust. If we go back to 2019, we were already witnessing to a deep change on the mentioned models, so the supply chain model, the procurement models, thanks to the digital transformation, the use of artificial intelligence tools, and the use of big data. This then this digital transformation with all these elements allow the main contractors, APC contractors, so even the main client, to collect and use data on the performances of the suppliers, not only on the project that is under quotation or the actual projects where the supplier is performing, or maybe just the previous one because still there, still monitored, strictly monitored, but along the entire story of the supplier. So these kind of indicators apply on the entire story of the suppliers are able to better address the concept of total cost of quality. So that's true, and its effect that the main pillar is still the cost reduction. In my opinion, what is changing is the concept of cost. So that is evolving, that for sure is evolving. So the saving activities are not more related on the price of the proposal itself, but as I said before, there is more attention to the intangible aspects. So when we talk about the overall cost, we talk also about reduction of the risk. We are talking about respect to delivery. We are talking about the high quality, the right quality of the products and the services. We are talking about technological capabilities and also a design that is able to satisfy CapEx and OpEx needs. So especially when we talk about extended life of equipment, we talk about product life cycle, we talk about sustainability. So that is moving the relationship with the supplier a step before, and the end of the relationship is a step after the previous model. So the next step that we have to expect, because it's already there, it's already the pipeline, and the pandemic is accelerated this kind of reshape, is that the next step is the use of the digital silos that shared between the clients are able to create references and indicators that will be used to create some strategic vendor list of suppliers that not only in sense of high performer, but also in a well-defined and historical profile in terms of performances. Because only if you have if you have a data that are moving on the entire story of supplier, the clients are able to address immediately cost and effort on the project. So I make you the example that Intertek itself have been involved by client since long time in this in the development of tools that are able to monitor the supplier's performances and also let help the supply chain of the client to solve some gaps in the vendor list in terms of gaps of products, gaps of services, maybe gaps in terms of geographical opportunity, but even to identify them in a shorter way and on the best supplier to be qualified. This is because the indicators really let the opportunity to the client to understand which are the ones that maybe they have an up and down movement inside the data indicators. And then the end, this kind of profile risk to jeopardize the efforts that we were talking about, and then the end recurring on a higher cost. So this is a kind of support that I mentioned before that we are, for example, we have been involved as the Intertek, are more and more required not only for technical and technological aspects of the suppliers, but also on the overall sustainability of the supply. So the additional indicators are economical, financial, their R&D activities, technological development. So, and what is important for the suppliers that we mentioned before, like industrial equipment and piping components, is to have these, to maintain a strong and continuous improvement on three main pillars. That is the process improvement, technological improvement, and business improvement. So just a final example, some clients are moving to design and to design and to sign with their main supplier, the strategic suppliers, some disaster recovery agreements. So a disaster recovery means where the partner at the end agree that any kind of event that will impact on the business will be mitigated. And again, which kind of event? Any kind, even a pandemic, social or political issues, or maybe even if we talk about Industry 4.0, in case of cyber attack. Everything must be mitigated to avoid any disruption on the business.
I leave the floor to Mr. Chris Conrad, Quality Manager for Valves and Flange Management at Chevron.
Talking about the second question here, talking about the supply chain of the valve industry in particular, I think the major components that have held the industry together for the past 20 years will continue into the next 20 years. I don't see a major shift, but I do see shifts within it. For example, we're talking about supporting existing assets. When you support an existing asset base like that, a business unit or a project that's aging, you're going to need valves that quickly. Okay, and getting valves quickly, getting valves that are random in some aspects, different specs, is going to be taking a different strategy. It's not a project-based strategy in most cases. It's going to be a more of a quick turn, distributor-based. So we're going to see a shift in a lot more distribution, in my opinion. So the distributors are going to have to become smarter using that global footprint that they utilize and being able to move products around that meet the specification requirements of that particular project or business unit. From that aspect, you're also going to have. So let's talk about the distribution base a little bit. Then we're going to get into the aspects of the quick turn, the project bases, and the sub-suppliers, right? So distribution is going to continue to grow. It could be regional, but primarily what works best is having a global distribution base. There's going to be instances, of course, where a project in an operational type phase is going to need something quickly, and those valves are going to be of a high spec nature. And that's where you get into the quick turn manufacturers. Could be a traditional manufacturer that has a quick turn line, but that'd be something that has Inconel overlays in the valve, lip seals, special packing, anything real special that's not sitting on the shelf of a distributor. When something goes down on a project, we're losing millions of dollars a day. We're going to need something immediately, either fix it or get a new valve, depending on the severity of the issue. So we've seen a number of these quick turn suppliers arise, and so we'll be utilizing them more to support this. Of course, the traditional, and then getting into the traditional project basis, if we have a grouping of valves, there comes economies of scale by having something somewhat special made in a batch, engineered type products. So we're going to utilize that engineered type product as well. So that's the traditional big project work that we're talking about, hundreds and hundreds of valves. Might not be that on all projects. There's going to be projects out there that are new. They're going to use that, but really focusing in on the existing asset bases, where I said I think the majority of the focus is going to be on for major oil companies, adding to those or supporting operations. That's going to be really in the realm of the quick turn and distribution basis. But you know, if we look at the way that the industry has evolved, especially say in Italy, back in the early days, you would have the manufacturer take care of everything. You'd have a huge base of workers taking a raw forging and machining it down and doing all the aspects of the manufacturing, assembly and testing and everything done in-house. Italian labor laws and flexibility issues and just efficiencies really created this boom of sub-suppliers that can do those activities for them. So you can have a majority of raw material and finished products coming to the valve manufacturer, which is actually just an assembly and test aspect. And even that assembly and test aspect, we're seeing those being used as kits into different countries to get local content. So it can be done and assembled and tested in Italy, anywhere else in the world for that matter, or of course in that particular project, say here in Kazakhstan where I am now. And that's going to be a big play for the future is local content. So you know the sub-supply chain is going to stay healthy. I don't see a major change there. I actually see it increasing, and as demand increases, of course, as the global energy needs increase, you're going to see everybody working. So just to wrap that up, it's more of a shift towards distribution, quick turn. I think that's going to ramp up a lot more than what we've seen, global distribution to support the global projects. We've seen that a lot in the U.S., but on the internationals, it's not as common just due to the large projects and such and getting product in. So that's what, in my opinion, that's what we're going to see. You know, as far as standardization of specifications for that distribution, I think that you can standardize depending on the business unit. So I know there's a big push for standardization. I agree that there can be a lot of consolidation of specs, but what I've seen is that it's really tailored to the real commodity style valve. Now, if we talk about something that I'm working in here with high pressures, high H2S, complex lip seals and such, I see a standardization on the high end and a standardization probably high, medium, low, depending on the different places that we're operating. So you can't standardize. You just need, that word needs to be understood that you're going to standardize towards the high end in a lot of cases for complex environments, because if not, if you need to get an overlaid lip seal valve, special testing and such, you're going to have to go to that quick turn manufacturer and not hold that in stock. So that's my 2 cents. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
I leave the floor to Mr. Maurizio D'Ambrosio, Head on Shore Category Management, Piping and Structure at Saipem.
Yeah, I do understand your question, but to be honest with you, I have also to say that as an EPC contractor, we are always caught in between two fires. From one side, we have the end user, our client, that keep on asking for cost reduction in order to minimize their capex. On the other side, we have the presence in the market of newcomers, especially from the Far East area, that are trying to enter the market by applying price policy very aggressive. In this situation, what we do is to leverage the supply chain in order to ensure the margins to our project. But to answer to your question, I would like to say that as onshore division, we launched since more than 1 year a new initiative in procurement we called Procurement Excellence program that has two main objectives. The first one is to understand the real cost of the supply, and the second to understand the cost structure of our vendor. And this is because we would like to identify together with the vendor which are the possible area of cost reduction. And I want to specify cost reduction and not margin from both sides. Basically, we want to arrive to procurement model that are quite similar to those already adopted in the automotive or electronic industry, where large agreement, cross-project and cross-client are set in order to ensure larger volume for supply to vendors and also competitive price to the EPC contractor. We know that it's a program very ambitious because it requires very mutual trust and transparencies. And of course, we need some time to reach this. But we have already registered positive result from the market, and we are strongly committed to arrive to the end.
Thank you to our guest for your time, for your answer, for your point of view. The workshop is ended. I wish you all a very nice day. Bye-bye.